There is only one gravestone in St James' graveyard that actually mentions Armstrong's factory, or Vickers as it later became known, but there must be many other Armstrong workers among the almost 13,000 people buried in this graveyard. At their peak, these huge engineering works employed more than 23,000 people and eventually extended for almost 3 miles along the West Newcastle riverside. William Taylor had worked at Armstrong's Elsick works for 27 years when he died in 1875 at the age of 57. We have no photograph of William Taylor, and we only know the bare facts about his life. William was born in Castle Eden in County Durham, but lived in Benwell for most of his life, probably drawn there by the employment opportunities offered by West Newcastle's rapidly expanding engineering industries. William was a stonemason by trade, as his father had been before him. A single man, he lodged with a family called Simpson for many years in a place called Green Tree Yard in Benwell village. Shortly before his death, he moved to South Benwell, but we do not know the address or the reason for the move. On his death, William left a substantial sum, over £200,000 in today's money. This was unusual for the times and may explain why he alone, of all the former Armstrong's workers, has a headstone at his burial place. By contrast, much is known about his employer, William Armstrong. The son of a prosperous corn merchant, Armstrong was a lawyer turned inventor and entrepreneur who was able to put his ideas into practice by setting up his own business with help from his many wealthy friends and colleagues. He developed a globally successful company, achieving great wealth and status in the process. On his death, his estate was valued at £1.4 million. He had become Baron Armstrong of Crowkside, named after his large country estate in Northumberland. William Armstrong also owned Jesmondine House and Bamborough Castle, a striking contrast to the cramped terraced housing where most of his workers lived. William Taylor must have been one of the first to join Armstrong's workforce. William Armstrong bought 5.5 acres of land on the riverside at Elsick and set up a factory there in 1847. Originally, this built hydraulic machinery, such as cranes to load and unload ships on the quayside at Newcastle. Soon the factory branched out into other things, including manufacturing bridges, such as the swing bridge over the Tyne. But the real key to his success was the move into armaments. Armstrong patented a new gun which was superior to existing ordnance and was appointed engineer to the War Department. From then on, the company grew rapidly. In 1866, Armstrongs came to an agreement with Mitchells, owners of the Low Walker shipyard, to develop naval work jointly, with Mitchells building the ships and Armstrongs the guns. 17 years later, the two companies merged. In 1884, a shipyard was opened at the Elsick site, concentrating mainly on building warships. With its own blast furnaces turning out high-quality steel, the works now had the capacity to build and equip an entire warship, from raw material to the finished product. Armstrong's became the most successful exporter of warships in the world. In just over 30 years, it built 90 armed vessels, including battleships, submarines and torpedo cruisers. The first battleship to be built at Elsick was the HMS Victoria, the largest and most expensive ship to be built on the Tyne so far. One of Elsick's most important customers was the Japanese Navy, which bought 9 warships from the company. But it also built warships for many other countries, including China, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Portugal and Turkey, as well as Britain, at times arming both sides in a particular conflict. In 1897, the company extended further through a merger with a Manchester-based armaments firm, becoming Armstrong, Whitworth and Company. By now there were 11,000 people working at the Elsick factory. Soon afterwards, in 1899, Armstrong opened a second factory at Scotswood to extend the production of armaments. Just before the start of the First World War, Armstrong opened a new naval yard at Walker. This was the beginning of the end of shipbuilding at Elsick. The last warship to be built there was the aircraft carrier HMS Eagle, launched in 1918. Over the years, the company continued to diversify, not only developing other types of military equipment, such as tanks and aircraft, but also manufacturing other products, including locomotives and tractors. But armaments continued to be the mainstay of the business. Wars were boom times for Armstrong's as demand rose for its products. During both World Wars, women were drafted into the workforce to help with production, but most lost their jobs again when war ended. Between the wars, Armstrongs merged with another big engineering and armaments company to become Vickers Armstrong. This made it the third largest manufacturing employer in Britain, with major production sites across the country. After the Second World War, employment in Vickers' West Newcastle factories fell steeply and continued to decline through the following decades. For much of the 19th and 20th centuries, Vickers Armstrongs dominated employment in the West End, as well as occupying nearly all the riverside land from Elswick to Scotswood. As the factories expanded and employment grew, the slopes above the riverside industrial area were increasingly filled up with homes for the workers and their families. First Elswick, then Benwell, and then Scotswood lost their rural character and became busy urban areas. Just about every resident was an incomer like William Taylor. People flooded into West Newcastle from the nearby rural areas of Northumberland and Durham, and from more distant places such as Cornwall and the north of Scotland. It was not unusual to find 3 generations of a family working at one of the huge factories. But now these factories also are dead and buried. Both the Elswick and Scotswood works closed in the 1970s despite vigorous local campaigns. Armstrong's Elswick Works had been at one time the biggest employer in Newcastle. When it closed, the entire site was cleared and turned into a modern business park, with echoes of its former industrial glory lingering in road names and heritage signs.